So there are three things I want us to do today. So let's wrap up very quickly. That's why I'm trying to start exactly on time. Okay, let's just wrap up quickly so that you have enough time to prepare for the IA and the exams. And then I hope you guys have taken a look at the past questions. They are pretty standard and it requires you to do a lot of work. So I'll urge you to start preparing as soon as possible. I completely understand. All right. I hope you can hear me. I mean, Rhoda is saying my voice is low.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
All right. Okay. So I hope you are fine with what I'm saying, that we should try and wrap up today. And
Yes,
then,
sir.
Yes, please.
yeah, so that you have Thursday for yourself to prepare for the IA. And then you have, I mean, all the, when are you writing the macroeconomics?
Saturday.
No.
No.
The
Exam.
main exams.
Exam. 17th or 18th.
17.
17th of November.
Mm.
Yeah. So I want you people to prepare very, very well. I mean, the exams questions that I've seen, the past questions that I've seen, they are not very difficult, but it requires you to think a little bit. All right. So it's important you prepare very well. I don't want what happened last semester to happen once more. Okay. We haven't again decided on what the type of questions we will meet on that, and I'll let you know.
So
I can organize.
the
I can
IA
organize
is outside.
the IA is this Saturday, but the main exams is around the 17th.
It's on site.
Which one?
The IA.
It's over Sakai.
So
Haven't you had any announcement on it?
no, sir.
Check,
No, sir.
and check from how do you call it? Check from Sakai and see whether there's no announcement there.
So it's online.
It's going to be online, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so let's start. Let's start what we want to do. All right. So this we should have done last week, but I couldn't come because I was occupied somewhere. All right. So inflation, it's not very difficult. So I'll just walk through it. There are just some concepts that you need to. In fact, they are not even treating the labor economics to the very core details. What you are trying to do is just to look at the definitions of employment, unemployment, what is the impact and the cost. And then the same happens to inflation. So it's not anything very difficult. All right. So there is this thing called the labor force, and it's supposed to be made up of people who are employed and people who are not employed. People who are employed are those that have work. So the employed are those who work for pay, but includes those who are temporarily absent from work due to illness. Those are the small nuances that you need to know. That is not just to those who are working for a pay, but somebody who is out of work temporarily is also an employed person. Okay, so those are some of the things you need to know. I think one of the past questions you asked to distinguish between one of these concepts. Okay, so these small nuances is what when we are mapping, we take a very good look at. Okay, unemployed, those who are not employed, but are actively looking for work. Okay, so if the person is not employed, but is looking for work, then we say he's what? He's unemployed, okay? And then there's this other concept, discouraged workers, okay? So these people are not part of the labor force, but they are people without employment who have given up search for employment. So these are people who have searched for jobs for a long time without success, and what they've done is more or less to give up. They are not part of the labor force, okay? So I can trick, not that we can trick you and put discouraged workers, employed people, unemployed people, and ask you to calculate the people who are employed, the ratio of people who are employed. All right. We can trick you and put discouraged workers there. They are not part of what? The labor force. Okay. So this is what I was referring to. How do you calculate the unemployment rate? The unemployment rate is very simple. Just so that when you add the unemployed people to the employed people, they constitute the labor force. So if you're asked to calculate the proportion of unemployed, it's just the unemployed divided by what? The labor force. Okay? And if you're asked to calculate the proportion of employed people, so it's the employed people divided by what? the labor force. And there's an example here. Okay. All right. It says that a country has a population of 417. Labor statistics from the country shows that 29.68 million people are currently employed and 2.4 million people are unemployed. So the size of the country's labor force is when you add the employed to the unemployed. And you get 32.17. I say calculate the labor force participation ratio. So the labor force participation ratio is just the employed. So the people in the labor force participation ratio is just the people in the labor force divided by what? The population. If you are asked to calculate the employment rate, okay, then you just divide the people who are employed divided by what? The labor force. If you are asked to calculate the unemployment rate, it's just the unemployment people divided by what? I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
So these ones are not very difficult. That's why I'm trying to just brush to it. I know, Bridget, I know, because they are not very difficult. They are things that when you read, the only place you have to be careful about is these definitions. Okay, these definitions that you see here. Okay, who are the unemployed and who are the employed? So the employed people includes even those who don't have work, but they are temporarily absent from work. They are just temporarily out of work because they are sick or they are on leave. All right, temporary out of work. Yes, you have to. The moment you see rate, then Luisa, the moment you see rate, you need to multiply it by 100 so that it can be converted into what? A percentage. Okay. All right. Okay. So these definitions are the things that you need to take carefully. Okay. Then this again is something that appeared in the exams, and I urge you to take a closer look at them. All right. There's a distinction between this thing called unemployment spell and unemployment duration. Unemployment spell and unemployment duration. So there's an example here that makes it easy for you to understand. Say, for example, an individual who starts the year with a job but loses it around March, finds a new job in June, holds on to October, and loses it for the rest of the year, we say that the person has what? 2 unemployment spells. So the number of periods that he was unemployed is what is referred to as the unemployment spell. Okay, so a person starts the year with a job but loses it around March, finds a new job in June. So between March and June, he was unemployed. Finds a new job in June and October. So between June and October, he was employed. But in October, after October, so November, December, he lost the job. Yeah. So as Omar Frederick, I've seen your email. I'll send you all the slides. So don't worry about that. Okay. So he has 2 unemployment spells. Okay, 2 unemployment spells. But when you put the length of time together, so assuming the first unemployment spell was 2 months, the other one was 2 months, then the total unemployment duration is what? 4 months. Okay, it's 4 months. So this is something you need to be careful about. All right. So these are still definitional issues that you shouldn't miss. Okay, you shouldn't miss them. I hope you understand what I've said.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Sir,
Yes.
please go over it again.
Say go over, please.
Who says I should go over? I'll take my notes 10 from his mark. Who yet?
Please go.
Okay, I'm just kidding. SNA, she should be recording. SNA is not in class today. All right. Okay, good. All right. So I was just trying to distinguish between unemployment spell and unemployment duration. And I was saying that unemployment spell is different from unemployment duration. And there's an example here. We have somebody who has been working from January and February, March, he is unemployed. He is unemployed between March and June. So between March and June, he is unemployed. Then he gets a job from June to October. But after October, he becomes unemployed again. Then we say that that person has 2 unemployment spells within the year, within that particular year. Within that particular year, the person has 2 unemployment spells. So he had 2 separate periods that he was what? Unemployed. 2 unemployment spells. But the duration is the total length of time. So if the first unemployment spell was 2 months and the second one was 2 months, then the total unemployment duration is 4 months. But the number of durations becomes the spells. So he has what? 2 unemployment spells, but the total duration is what? 4 months. Is he okay? Is that okay? Barakat.
Yes, please.
Good. All right. Okay. Now about the types of unemployment. This is something too that you should take your time and know the differences. Okay. So there's frictional unemployment, structural unemployment, and cyclical unemployment. The distinction between these types of unemployment is useful for understanding what are the causes of unemployment and what type of policies are needed. All right. So if you know the type of unemployment, so unemployment has its own characteristics, different types. The long and short of the story is this: if you know the type of unemployment that a particular country is facing at a particular time, then you know the type of policy to use to deal with it. So, for instance, when we say frictional unemployment, we are looking at the unemployment that results because people are moving from one work to the other. Legally, you are not allowed to do 2 full-time jobs. All right. So if you get, so I'm a lecturer at the University of Ghana. If I just get a job at the Bank of Ghana, I obviously need to alert the Bank of Ghana and tell them, oh, or I have to alert the University of Ghana and tell them, oh, give me 3 months to complete my job. Then after the 3 months, because probably Bank of Ghana also will definitely not allow me to start immediately, they will give me some 2 or 3 months to just rest or get myself in shape. That type of unemployment, that period in which you are moving from one job to the other job, that you are unemployed, is referred to as frictional unemployment. So look at how it is. It's because you are moving from one job to another. So typically, you may not need any serious government policy to deal with that type of unemployment because the person's job is guaranteed. All right. So at a point in time, some workers are changing jobs or changing locations. Since people do not always work from one job to the other, people will be unemployed because of that. All right. So that's the source of frictional employment. So frictional unemployment cannot be reduced to zero. Even if the economy is using all of its resources and everything is working well, there will be some sort of unemployment, and it's called frictional. And it's simply voluntary. All right, it's simply voluntary so that you can warm up into the next job. It's never a good idea psychologically to just move from one job and the next day you're in another job. All right, psychologically, it's not a very good thing. All right, so this type of unemployment, you don't really need any serious government policy to clean it up because it will eventually to clean up by itself. All right, eventually to clean up by itself. But let's look at this type of unemployment, structural unemployment. So this structural unemployment, it occurs when there is this mismatch between the demand for and the supply of labor. All right. So when the available jobs do not match the skills of the available workers. All right. So a good example may be Ghana, where we have no, let me not go. Let me not even take it at the macro level so that it becomes too difficult for you to understand. But look at the situation where in an area there are a lot of sugarcane plantations, and there's a factory there that can convert the sugarcane into sugar, but nobody there has any idea how that can happen. All right. So we have a situation where there's a mismatch. Okay, there's a mismatch in skills. The skill people require to convert the sugar cane to sugar, even though the skill is not there. So it simply arises because of structural changes with the economy. Example, the rise of new industries. Okay, So here, so this example is a case where new industries arise and they make the old industries die. Okay, Schumpeter, I don't know if you know so much about Schumpeter's argument that innovation, when firms come up with new things, it kills off those that are less technologically intensive. Okay, so this is a structural type of unemployment that requires serious policy intervention from the government. All right, it requires serious intervention from the government. So if the people's skills or if there's new skills that are coming, or the new industries that are coming are killing off old firms, what exactly do you do to make sure the old firms are able to survive? All right. So if you know a little bit of economics, you may probably have heard about these infant industry arguments. Whatever, let's give them support, let them grow, let's improve upon people's skills. So this type of unemployment, because it involves a structural change in the economy, we need a serious policy that can change a lot of things. Okay, so this type of unemployment is quite serious. Yes.
So please, can you use a different example to explain it? I don't really get it.
So you don't understand the skills mismatch.
Yes.
Skills mismatch is probably factories come up and they need people who can come and operate the machines, but there's just nobody available who can operate those machines. So the skills needed by the firm, the people who are unemployed cannot provide the skills needed by the firms. Is that clear now?
Okay, yes. Thank you.
The skills required by the firms cannot be provided by the people who are available. Yes, Teresa. Teresa, please speak. Please speak, Teresa. Okay. So I don't think Teresa is able to speak. All right. So let's move on.
Recording in progress.
Got it. Okay. Let's move on to cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is just similar to what we know about the business cycles. That says that when there is low demand, where there's low demand for labor across all sectors. So when you are in the trough, there's low demand for labor and it's just not one particular sector, across all sectors. Then when there is a boom, unemployment vanishes. All right? Okay, when there is a boom, unemployment vanishes and that kind of thing. So that one mimics the business cycle. And we know over time when the economy recovers, okay, so this one too may require some serious policy. Okay, so the structural, cyclical, they may require some serious policy. But as for the frictional, it may just clean up by itself. Okay, it may just clean up by itself. Okay, now there is this thing you need to know, that there's this thing called the natural rate of unemployment. And it's the unemployment rate in an economy. So he's saying that the unemployment rate in an economy will never be zero, even if the economy is producing at its maximum potential. So when the economy is producing at its maximum potential, what that really means is that, so assuming there's capital, there's labor, 4 factors of production, you are saying that all these 4 factors of production are being put to use. But at least we know that there's something called frictional unemployment. And it's not because the person is, there are no jobs for the person. The person has a job, but he's just moving from one job to the other. All right. So that type of, okay, let me just take it step by step. So the unemployment rate that prevails when output and employment are full potential is called what? The natural rate of unemployment. So even if we are employing all of, so even if, Adelaide, good question, but I will answer it. I will make sure it comes in the exam. You answer it. So Adelaide says, government's claim about the payroll being full can it be termed as cyclical unemployment? It's a good question. I won't answer. I will let you guys answer it in the exams. All right. So the unemployment rate that occurs, even if the economy is at its full potential, is called the natural rate of unemployment. And we know it can occur simply because of this type of frictional unemployment. Okay. So because frictional and sometimes structural unemployment are never zero, there will always be this positive unemployment, even if the economy is positioned at what its potential level. And that is called what? The natural rate of unemployment. Okay, that is called the natural rate of unemployment. Good. Let's see whether we can look at some of the impacts and the costs of unemployment. Okay, so the main impact of unemployment, the main impact of employment can be classified into two. There is the economic impact, and then there is the social impact. So economic impact, we are saying that, and how is the economic impact refers to the loss of income. So those that are, we like to play a lot with opportunity cost. So we would like to measure the opportunity cost of the unemployed people. The opportunity cost of the unemployment people is what they would have produced if those unemployment were employed. So that's how we can, one way.
Only multiple phone. Let's send it millimeter number. Ma every day I may update in the channel.
Hello.
My phone I may update in it now. Yes, now.
Hey, how come I'm not able to stop them? Okay, good. All right. So there's this guy called Okun. He came up with a law. How come I'm not able to mute everybody? All right. I hope I've been able to mute everybody. At a point, I'll allow you to be able to unmute and talk so that this type of disruptions don't. Okay. Now, let's come to this thing about Okun. So what we're talking about is the economic costs of unemployment. Okun came up with a law. And according to Okun's law, for every 2% fall in GDP, it is relative to 1% increase in unemployment. For every 2% fall in GDP, there is an equivalent unemployment rise by about 1 percentage point. Okay, and that law is derived from this particular algebraic equation. Okay, so we have the y with a bar is the full unemployment output. The one without the bar is the actual output. The u is the actual unemployment, and then u minus the u hat is what? The natural rate of unemployment. Okay, and then we are saying that we are going to call the term u minus u hat. So the difference between the actual unemployment and natural rate of unemployment, we'll call it cyclical unemployment. Okay, so this side is called cyclical unemployment. So Okun law says that if cyclical unemployment rate is 1%, so if this u minus u hat is 1%, then output will be 2% lower than the full employment output. Okay, it will be 2% lower the full employment output. And you don't need to cram any of these formulas, but you need to know this two factor that Okun is making reference to, that for every 2% fall in GDP relative to the potential, unemployment rises by what? 1 unit. Okay, unemployment arises by 1 unit. And I'm pretty sure something like this can come in your interim of assessment, where you're supposed to quote some of these two stuff. All right? Okay. Yes, Paul. Okay, hold on. Paul, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Sir, please, the formula up there is
it's y bar minus y divided by y bar.
Okay, thank you.
What is the rate of actual output that exceeds the full employment output? Okay, so there's y bar down here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now let's talk about the okay. So So the economic cost of unemployment is equally borne by the entire labor force. The reason is that in some countries they pay insurance benefits and all those sort of things. If so, it's not just the economic cost is not just being measured in terms of the unemployed. It can also be measured in terms of the employed, because it is their taxes that they pay that the government uses to pay as unemployment benefits and all those sort of things. All right. So as the unemployment rate increases, there's so much pressure on government to generate a lot of tax revenue. So the employed people can still suffer. Okay, the employed people can still suffer. Okay. So extended periods of unemployment may lead to disproportionate decrease in people's income. Okay. Okay. May lead to disproportionate decrease, but it's not that significant. Okay, it's not that significant. And again, unemployment for a long periods of time can lead to what? Loss of skills. Okay, it can lead to loss of skills. Okay, and then the social impact, you already know. You can imagine what some of the social impacts will be: poor mental health of people, social vices, unrest, that kind of thing. All right. So some of this social prostitution increasing and all those sort of things. All right. Okay. Any question? Any question before we move on to inflation? Any question on unemployment? So the basic thing here is for you to be able to distinguish between the concepts. What is unemployed people? How do we define the employed people? How do we define the unemployed people? How do we define discouraged workers? What are the costs of unemployment, both economic and social? Okay. All right. If there's no question, let's move on to yes, Teresa. You can unmute and ask your question.
So please, my question was, you see during the COVID period where workers were in the house, what type of unemployment is that?
Good. What type of unemployment do you think that is?
So me,
Yes.
I think it's frictional unemployment.
Oh, but it wasn't people moving in between jobs.
Okay, someone says seasonal.
It's not seasonal. It's not. If it's seasonal, then it should be repeating. It should be repeating itself. Like so. So it was purely because of COVID that people were staying home, and it can't be. It can be close to cyclical. It can be close to cyclical, but cyclical means every 10 years it should be repeating itself. So that's why I disagree. It is cyclical. It should be repeating. If it is seasonal or cyclical, seasonal, it should be repeating itself every year. Cyclical, every 10 years, it should be repeating itself. Okay. So I'll let you go and find out what type of unemployment that is. It's not cyclical and it's not seasonal. The COVID problem is not something that's seasonal. It's more or less a random shock. Okay. And if you say it's structural, I disagree too. I disagree. It's more or less a random thing. Okay. It's more or less a random thing. Okay. All right. So now let's go to inflation. All right. So inflation, the good thing about inflation is that inflation does not talk about one particular price. There's a basket of goods. I want to know. Okay. Rhoda, so underemployment is slightly different. Okay, underemployment is slightly different. Okay, where there's so much lack of skills and all. Okay, are you referring to it? Okay, I don't know whether you are trying to respond to the question that was posed by about the COVID thing. Okay, it's not underemployment. It's more or less a random thing. It's very, very random. I mean, technically, we define cycles that they should be repeating themselves every 10 years. If it is seasons, it should be. So, rainy season, whatever happens to agricultural prices during rainy season, it's something that repeats itself every year. Okay, it's something that repeats itself every year. Those are the type of things we call seasonal. All right. So, it's very random. This type of unemployment is very random. Okay. All right. Oh, so underemployment is when people's skills don't really match and they just don't qualify to. That's underemployment. Okay, that's underemployment. All right. Now let's come to inflation, where we are saying that it is not referring to just one particular price. What inflation refers to is general level, and for us in Ghana, we have this basket that is used by Hey, Antoinette. So some of you are not listening to the lecture at all. You are chatting at, hey, okay. Anyway. Okay, so inflation does not mean price of a single good. We are looking at the price of all general level of goods. Okay. So rising inflation means that when you say inflation is rising, what it really means is that general level of prices are going up. So what's happening here is this. Some prices of some specific goods may be going up, some may be going down, some will remain the same. But on average, we are saying that the price of the goods that are in our typical basket is increasing, and that is what is inflation. Okay, that's what inflation is all about. Okay, that is what inflation is all about. So there is this formula for the calculation of inflation, and I know for sure that Ophelia has taken you through this calculation already. All right, and then there is this popular question that always comes in the main exams. Okay, where you are made to refer to a certain passage and answer a question related to it. Right. So this is it. This is where it's about. We should have treated this before you have done your tutorial, but it was still good that you've seen how. Can you guys confirm that you were taking through this during your tutorials? Oh, type. You can type and can you confirm? You can unmute yourself and can you guys unmute yourselves? Good. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
So
sir.
let me not just waste too
Yes,
much
sir.
time on it.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
go straight. So you know the distinction between headline inflation and core inflation.
No, please.
No, sir. No, sir. We didn't do that one.
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. So the only okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So the only so when inflation is calculated, counting all items in this so-called the consumer's bucket. If we use all the items, it's called headline inflation. But there are some true items in the basket whose prices are highly volatile, and they are what? Energy and utilities. So core inflation is when inflation is calculated for just the prices of utilities and energy. So we have a basket, it includes both telecommunication, utility, energy, a lot of things in the basket. Basic goods, all right. So if we calculate the inflation for all the goods in the basket, then what we say, the rate that we get is called the headline inflation. But when we focus on just these two, utilities and energy, their prices are highly volatile. They can change significantly, and they can account for a lot of changes in headline inflation. So our monetary authorities say, okay, then it was interesting to calculate the inflation for just those two products. So that is what core inflation is. All right, so you should know the distinction between headline inflation and then what? Core inflation. Okay, all right. And then economic agents tend to have expectation about the rate of inflation. So expectations is very, very important, especially when we want to look at how we can deal with the causes of inflation. If you anticipate that inflation will go up, you are prepared for it. But when you do not anticipate it, it is a problem. Okay, it is a problem. All right. So now, in terms of the basic price. How do you determine price in economics? How do you determine price in economics? You can unmute, you can just unmute it. How do you determine price in economics? Oh, you just look at the demand curve and the supply curve. Are you guys with me? Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
please.
You just,
Yes, sir.
the demand curve must meet the supply curve. Okay, so look at what will happen to price if the supply curve goes up. Okay, or shifts to the left. And what will happen to the demand curve if the demand curve also shifts up? So if economy says prices are determined by the interaction of, then if inflation is increased in the general level of prices, it means that there are two main types of causes or types of shocks that can give rise to inflation. The one that will increase aggregate demand and the one that will do what? Increase aggregate supply. So shocks to aggregate demand and shocks to aggregate supply. So there's one called cost push inflation. It refers to what? Aggregate supply induced inflation. So let me just repeat myself that in economics, the price of a good is determined by the interaction of demand and supply. If inflation is talking about increase in the general level of prices, any shock to supply or demand that leads to an increase in price is one of the cause or type of inflation. Okay, and I'm saying that based on that, there's inflation can be aggregate supply induced or aggregate demand induced. When it is aggregate supply induced, then it is what? A cost push inflation. All right. And when does aggregate supply increase or shift to the left? We all know when production costs are beginning to go up. So when production cost goes up, it induces price to go up through the supply side. Okay, so cost push inflation results from rising costs during periods of high unemployment and slack utilization of resources. Okay, slack utilization of resources. So when unemployment is high, prices are high, and the effect is coming from what? The supply side, because firms don't get a lot of people to work with. Labor cost is high, so they have to increase prices. Okay, and when all resources are not being fully utilized, a supply shock, cost push inflation. Okay. All right, and then there is the one induced by demand. All right, so examples are given here. Rising wages is a common source of cost push inflation. Also, oil price shock is another source of cost push inflation. And then Ghana recorded its highest inflation ever in 1983, and the rate was 123%, 123%. That was the highest rate of inflation. Okay, that was the highest rate of inflation. Okay, then the demand pull inflation, as I referred to it, is aggregate demand what's induced. And one of the most important drivers of money-driven inflation, demand-driven inflation is what? An increase in money supply. And this is very simple to see, all right?
I'm the person who told you that I didn't want to do medicine.
Louise. Okay. All right. Okay. So there is this gentleman, popular economist. Okay, he's a monetary economist. He's called Milton Friedman. Okay, he came up with this concept that inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. And this is something that if you're a macroeconomic student and you don't know, it will be difficult. All right. So and the transmission mechanism is what you see here. All right. We talked about this last week when we were dealing with the IFLM. Milton Friedman. Always everywhere. Mechanism. What will happen to so this is the LM curve. We want to look at the money market. What happens to the money market and how that translates into the goods market. So there's an increase in money supply. Don't forget the money supply curve is what? is vertical. The demand for money is what? Downward sloping. So an increase in money supply leads to what? A fall in interest rates. As interest rate falls, we know investment in the goods market will increase. Consumption in the goods market will also increase. And when in this investment and consumption increases, it increases what? Aggregate demand. Induced. So there's an induced increase in demand. And then whenever there's an induced increase in demand, it comes with an increase in price. Okay, I hope you understand this transmission mechanism.
Could you please go over the transmission mechanism?
Who is speaking? Hello? Let me know who is speaking. I'm not able to tell.
It's Caris.
Caris. Good.
Yes, sir.
Last week, what did you say about the supply of money? What is the nature? Caris, please come back. I want you to go through it with me. Caris. Don't run away. Come back. Yes.
Don't worry, I'm fine.
You are not fine. You are not fine. You will go through it. Caris. So, Caris, come back. Where are you? Oh, Felicia, you want to do it for Caris?
Is it the part where the fiscal policy part?
No, the monetary policy part. What is the nature of the supply of money curve? Hey, you guys have forgotten already.
So it's vertical.
It's vertical. And what is the nature of the demand for money curve?
It's downward sloping.
So if there's an increase in money supply, what happens to the interest rate?
It drops.
Good.
It falls.
It falls.
And if it falls, what happens to investment and consumption?
It increases.
Increases.
It increases. And when it increases, what happens to aggregate demand?
Aggregate demand also increases.
Aggregate demand also increases. And what will happen to price?
Price increases.
Okay, so Rebecca's index number is 10840502. I've written it down. 5 marks for you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll give it to you when you need it.
Me too.
Yeah. What's your name?
It's a make sure you have forgotten.
Well, I don't know why I'm not seeing those speaking. I'm not able to see those speaking today.
Me too, I'm here.
Hey,
I'm also here, Caris.
Sir, I'm here.
Nancy is also here.
Caris, answer the question. Okay. So let's move on. All right. Okay. All right. The impact of inflation. I mean, these are things you should be able to go through it. There are consequences for inflation. So there is this thing called the shoe leather cost. Where is it, Paul? Yes, there's this thing called the shoe leather cost and then the menu cost. Okay, the shoe leather cost and the menu cost. Those are the main things that you need to. It's defined somewhere here. Okay. So these are just questions, just to tell you that whenever inflation is going up, it's a source of concern. And it is more, and that the concern is when it is unanticipated. When it is anticipated, well, people can able to revise their expectations. And then if for instance, if they tell you prices are going to go up tomorrow, then you come with a double money. People are able to deal with it. But when you don't know that prices will double tomorrow and you go to the market, you are holding the same money you were holding previously. You cannot buy, either you cannot buy the thing or you buy half the quantities that, all right, if prices double, for instance, okay, all right. So there is this thing called, when inflation anticipated, economic agents are able to plan on the inflation and its effect on demand is minimal, all right. So the menu cost has to do with the fact that people keep changing, exactly. So these are the definitions I wanted to refer to. When it is menu cost, because restaurants, and so it happened in Germany some long years ago when prices keep changing by the hour, and then people have to be changing their menu simply because the prices have changed. Okay, and then there's a shoe leather cost. Okay, so you have to. So again, in Germany, it got to a point where when you are going to withdraw money from the bank, you need to go with a wheelbarrow or so there's the shoe leather cost, which is the cost you incur in frequent withdrawals. Okay, your shoe wears. The cost of taking care of the wear is what you refer to as the shoe leather cost. All right. So these are the two costs you need to know. All right. And then inflation has a way of redistributing income. All right. It has a way of redistributing income. Okay. And is able to redistribute real wealth from lenders to what? To borrowers. So when inflation is going up, people try and do what? Melt their wealth. And those who gain are those who at that time are able to do what? Buy or borrow. Okay, so borrowers gain, lenders lose. When inflation is going up rapidly. Okay, and it also reduces real income. Okay, so real income is just measured by your income divided by what? Inflation. All right, so just imagine what will happen to your real income. So assuming real income is 100, inflation is 50. All right, what that really means, and assuming it changes from say 100 and goes to, just for simplicity, inflation goes to 100. All right, the prices have doubled 100%. So the long and short of the story is this: your real income, the purchasing power, reduces significantly with an increase in income. Your real income reduces significantly with an increase in income. All right, is that clear?
So please take this.
Right. So the long and short of this part of this is that inflation has a way of redistributing income or wealth. Okay. So for instance, if your income is 20 and the inflation rate is 2, or let me just use the price of a particular good, just that so that you're able to understand. So if your income is 20 and the price of a good is 2, how many of the good can you buy? Yes.
10.
10. 10 of it.
10.
Now,
10.
assuming
10.
assuming the
10.
price increases from 2 to 4, how many of the goods can you buy still?
I.
2 and a half.
That is what
Hey.
we are referring to. That
5.
inflation reduces.
5.
Good.
Yes.
I'll give all of you 5 marks. It's okay.
5.
Yes. So that's what we are saying, that it reduces the real income. And again, I'm saying that when inflation is going up, okay, it redistributes wealth from lenders to what? To borrowers. The lenders of that wealth, they give it out so that they can get more money to hold. So those who borrow or buy those wealth, okay, are those who gain. That's all I'm saying. Is that correct? Is that fine? Do you
So
understand?
no, so it's not fine. Can you go over it again? Probably use practical examples, please.
Some of these things using practical examples are difficult. Okay. So just know that when inflation is going up, and again, it has to be wealth, because don't forget that we are using, last week when we said what constitutes a rational individual's portfolio. What constitutes a rational individual's portfolio? It includes both what? Money and what? Assets, interest-bearing assets. So this is what we are saying. If inflation is going up or prices are doubling, what you need is to hold more money on you so that you can meet all your demand for money purposes. So we are saying that when you do that, you may be forced to deplete your interest-bearing assets. So the buyers of those assets are those who borrow, and those are the people who will gain. And those who sell are the lenders, and they are those who do what? Who lose. Is it clear now?
Yes, please.
Where's the gentleman that spoke? I can't find. Is it clear now? So inflation has its own way of doing this wealth redistribution. Yes, Teresa. I thought I saw Suman. Is it Sumana? Yes, Teresa. Speak. Your mic again. We can't hear you. Okay. All right. Teresa, your mic has a problem, so I think we can hear you. Right. So that's the basic thing about inflation. All right. Just take your time, go through it carefully, and you'll be fine. Okay. Oh, Teresa. Oh, I was just trying to explain what happens to real income. Okay. What happens to real income as prices increase? And I was saying that if your income was 20 and the price of a good is 2, you can buy only 10 of it. But if the price changes to 4 and your income is 20, you can only buy 5 of the good. That's all we are saying. Okay, so the first one was 20 divided by 2, you get 10. The next one was 20 divided by what? 5. 20 divided by 4, and then you get 5. Teresa, do you understand now? Oh, good. All right, good. Okay, so now let's move on to the next thing that we want to talk about, which is what? Balance of payments. Okay, balance of payments and then the exchange rate. And the reason why we'll talk about this has to do with what? The net export component of our aggregate demand equation. Okay, the net export. Don't forget that net export is just the difference between what? Exports and what? And imports. All right, the difference between exports and imports. So BOP is just about how do we record transactions about our exports and our imports. That's all BOP is about. And because you cannot use a CD in a country like USA, when you're going to buy stuff, like when you're importing stuff from, you need to melt the CD into what? $1. So that's where the exchange rate becomes important. There's this rate that is always quoted at the forex bureaus. The CD is 6.1 per dollar. All right. Okay, 6.15 per dollar. All right. So that is simply because because of the transactions that happen in the and the export and import sectors, you need another currency. Okay, you need another currency. So that's basically well. And again, it has been made easy for us. What we will basically do is to try and look at how the balance of payment account is measured. And then we also know how the exchange rate. Here, I'll try and slow down here a little bit, especially for those that are reading economics for the first time. Some of these things can be, so I'll slow down here a little bit. When I come to the budget deficit and all those things, then maybe I'll speed up there a little bit so that we can close on time. Myself, I'll be joining an event at 5, so I would like to see what will happen. So let's go ahead. Can we go ahead?
Yes. Okay. Yes, sir.
All right. Good.
Yes.
So formally, a country's balance of payment account is the systematic statement of all economic transactions between the country and the rest of the world. I've spoken about this already. That is the next export section. So if I take Ghana to be the country, Ghana exports to other countries, Togo, South Africa, and we also import from them. All transactions around these things is what is recorded in the so-called balance of payment. So it records all economic transactions of goods and services and movement of financial assets between a country and the rest of the world. And this movement of financial assets, when we get there, I'll show you why. Okay, I'll show you why financial assets must be moved. Okay, all right. So the balance of payment is just an accounting principle that if there's a credit, there should be a matching debit. All right, that it's an accounting principle. If there is a debit, there should be a credit. But for we, the economists, what we are interested in is what constitutes the debits and what constitutes what? The credits. All right. So any transaction that brings foreign currency into the country is a credit. Any transaction that brings foreign currency into the country is a credit. And any transaction that spends foreign currency is a debit. So it's not difficult to see that exports will always enter our BOP as a credit, because when you export a good, you get a foreign currency in return. So it will enter as a credit in the balance of payment. But when you are importing something, you pay back in foreign currency, and it's recorded as what? As a debit. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Please, can you repeat it?
Yes, sir.
Who says I should repeat it?
Still, I didn't know.
Let me see. Okay. So I'm saying that the balance of payment is an accounting principle. Just like we have credit and debit in our accounting statements and all those things. In the balance of payment too, we have credit and debit. But what we are interested in is what will constitute a credit and what will constitute a debit. And I'm saying that anything that brings foreign currency to the country is a credit. But anything that sends foreign currency away is a debit. Export. When you export a good, when I export gold to Switzerland, okay, the Swiss people pay me in dollar. So it brings foreign currency to Ghana. So it is entered as a credit. So not almost all exports bring what? A credit. But when you are importing, so when I buy chocolate I send cocoa to Switzerland, it's a credit. When I buy chocolate from them, it's a what? It's a debit. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Good. The person who said I should repeat, I hope it's clear now. Oh, where's my water? Okay. Right. Okay. Good. All right. Now let's look at the balance of payments. So the balance of payments typically has just two accounts. There is a current account and then a financial account. A current account and a financial account. In some textbooks, they call the financial account capital and financial account. Okay, so even in Ghana's budget, if you read Ghana's budget, there's a balance of payment attached to it at the back. It's an appendix document. Okay, we call it capital and financial account. We don't just call it financial account. We call it capital and financial account. Okay. Now, what goes into the current account? Okay. So this topic is also not very difficult. It's just about you knowing that the BOP consists of two accounts. There is a current account part component, and then there's a capital or financial account component. Okay. So now what goes into the current? So the current account records all incomes and expenditures related to the export and import of goods and services, investment income, and unilateral transfers. Okay, the export and import of goods and services, investment income, unilateral transfers. Okay, the next slide tries to define what we mean by unilateral transfers, investment income, export of goods and services. We'll go there. The financial accounts part. So the capital and financial account records transactions of assets, okay, financial assets between a country and the rest of the world. So there's a current account that does with the goods, export and import of goods and services, investment income, and unilateral transfer. So all of this, there's a debit side. So the current account, there's a debit side and a credit side. Then when it comes to the capex and the financial and capital account, there's also a debit side and a credit side. Okay, there's a debit side and a credit side. Anything that brings foreign currency into the country is a credit side. If it takes foreign currency away, it is a debit. Is that clear? Is that clear, gentlemen? Good.
No,
Yes.
come again.
All right. So what I'm saying is this: there are two components of the balance of payment. There is a current account, and then there is a capital or financial account. And for each of these accounts, there is a debit and there is a credit. And I'm saying that for each of them, there's a debit and a credit. Anything that brings currency into the country is a credit. Takes currency away is a debit. So there can be a debit and a credit for the current account, and then a debit and a credit for the capital account. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Good. It's important to understand this because that is what we have to be using throughout. Yes, good, Angela. Okay, when we're doing that, yeah, so that's correct. Okay, but I'll break it down a little bit so that it becomes easier for us. Okay, good. Now there is a last component called the official settlement account. Okay, so we'll be using. All right, so don't worry. When we move on, Asamoah Frederica. Yes, when we move on, you understand. So there's this last component, which is an official settlement account. We'll come to what constitutes or what goes into each of these stuff. All right. Okay. So now let's go to the current account. So the current account, we are looking at trade balance. Okay. The trade balance is just the export and import of goods and services. Then there is services, investment income, and unilateral transfers. So the trade balance is nothing but the difference between merchandise exports and imports. So trades in goods. Okay, so trades in goods. That's the trade balance. And then the services component includes the cost for shipping and freight, financial services, and foreign travel. All right. So that is what goes into these services. And so all of these are under the current account. Okay, all of these are under the current account. And then there is the investment income, which refers to investment income records earnings on foreign investments. So this includes interest rate payments, dividends, royalties, and other returns on assets. Example, return on stocks and patents. Okay. Unilateral transfers refer to payments that are made but not in return for goods and services. Examples include official foreign aid, gifts from residents, remittances. Okay. Gifts from residents of one country to another. Okay, so these are just definitions. So all of these investment income, unilateral transfers, trade bank, they all go under the current account. They all go under the current account. And as I said earlier on, the current account has a credit component and a debit component. So if you export something, you get foreign currency, enters as what? Credit. But when you import something and you pay back with foreign currency, it enters as what? As debit. Okay, it enters as debit. Okay, good. Now, all right. So now let's now come to the capital account. Okay, capital and financial accounts. What into the capital and the financial account? So the FA records asset transactions between the country and the rest of the world. In general, transactions that increases a country's assets and or decreases its liabilities are entered as credits, as debits. Do you know why? The reason is that when you are buying more assets, you are paying back with what? With foreign currency. So Eurobond, okay, Eurobond people are buying ours. But if we go and buy bond of another country, okay, Ghana buys a bond in Nigeria, we give them Naira, which we will call foreign exchange, the Naira CD. We give them Naira. So that Naira is leaving the country. So the country is enters as what? As a debit. Okay, it enters as what? As a debit. So if a country borrows to finance a current account deficit to show up as a credit, this thing I will explain it to you. Now, let me show you something. The balance of payment is an accounting principle. What that really means is that it must always do what? balance. Whenever you hear the word like there's a deficit in our BOP, it's just because the person does not really understand what he is referring to. Actually, there could be a deficit. Deficit means that the debits are greater than the credits. Okay, deficit means that the debits are greater than the credits. Actually, there could be a deficit in one of the accounts, either the current account or the capital account. So theoretically, this is it. If you have a debit in your current account, for instance, you are importing more than exporting, then by all means, because the BOP must always balance, there must be a surplus in your what? In your capital account, so that the balance of payment balances. Let me repeat myself. If you have a deficit in your current account, you must necessarily have a surplus in your capital account. But then the question is, if you have a deficit, how do you finance that deficit? If you have the money to pay, if you have the money from local sources to pay, you wouldn't have run into a deficit. But you run into a deficit because you don't have that money. So what you do is you borrow money from outside. And that borrowing of money, it can come in the form of what? A financial asset. Okay? You can sell a certain financial asset to the country, and the country will pay you back in money. And it will give you back money, which will go into your what? Capital account. So this is what this one is saying. It says that if a country borrows to finance the deficit in the current account, this current account, and there is a corresponding record in the capital account, which is what? A surplus. So it will show us as a credit in the capital account. Okay, that's all that this one is saying. Is it clear? Yes, Sumaya, where are you? Is it clear? Sumaya, and then Frederica, where are you? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it's clear. So explain it to me. Frederica, are you there? Okay. So this is what I'm saying. Okay, so for those of you who say it's not clear, what is not clear, so that I know what to explain? Let me hear from you guys. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Okay, so I was reading a question from Josephine. Josephine says, but sir, won't we still owe the country we borrowed? We owe them. We owe them. So the whole idea is this: the balance of payment must always balance. Usually, when there is a deficit or a surplus, the person must be referring to either the current account or what? The capital account. Because it must always balance. Credits must match the debt, and the credits must match the debits. If you have a deficit in your current account, you must necessarily have a surplus in your what? In your capital account. That's what we are saying. So if you have a deficit in your current account, you must necessarily borrow money, and that money can be coming in through a financial asset, and it goes into your capital account as a credit. Okay, it brings you money. If you are borrowing, it brings you money. So you have a surplus in your capital account and a deficit in your current account. Is that clear now?
Yes, sir.
Good. All right. Okay, so basically that's it. So it is divided into capital account and financial account. The capital account encompasses unilateral transfer of asset between countries. Yes, I think I've spoken about this already. And then the financial account records other transaction of asset between countries. Yes, sales of a country's assets results in financial inflow. So this is what I spoke about, and it's recorded as a credit in the financial account. The transactions that results in the financial outflow is recorded as a debit. Okay, good. Then transactions recorded in the financial accounts include those, so financial assets, direct and portfolio investments, purchases of sovereign bonds. Okay, I've spoken about this already. Okay. Now okay, I think there's a question. Who is that? Somebody raised their hand. Who is that? Paul.
Please, with the definition of the current account, there's something like the capital account rather. There's something like debt forgiveness. That one too, where will it be recorded? I mean, will it be debit or credit?
Debt forgiveness means a certain debit is being cancelled.
Okay, so that means it will go to the credit side.
No, you won't get, there's no financial flow associated with the, if you are referring to what the IMF did or the World Bank did, they brought some credit. So they brought some money in addition to the debt forgiveness. So that's a different issue. But if it is strictly a debt forgiveness, meaning that your debits are being cancelled.
So there will not be recording of such in the capital account.
There must be a correspondence. It must balance. By all means, it must balance. So there must be a corresponding. So what the World Bank does is that for them like this, when you are dealing with them, in addition to the debt forgiveness, there's something that is given in return. Okay, and it comes in as your credit.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then there is this last component, the official settlement balance, which refers to financial transactions by the central bank, just trying to clean up. All right, trying to clean up. So it includes changes in official reserve assets. So items in the balance include gold reserves, holdings of foreign government securities by the central bank, okay, and special assets created by the IMF, okay. So this is something that the Bank of Ghana deals with, all right, it deals with. And the official settlement balance is the net change in the country's official reserve assets, okay, all right, okay. So all of this goes into the capital account. So when a country runs a BOP surplus, it's a net holding of reserve as its net holding. So this BOP surplus is actually a surplus in the capital account. So its net holdings of reserve assets will do what? Will increase. Okay, so that's what we're saying. Every time you have a deficit in your current account, it must be matched by what? A surplus in your capital account. Okay, and this is the part. Okay, I think I've spoken about it. That the balance of both the CA, the current account, and the financial account must add up to 0. So when a country, so CA plus FA equals 0. When a country runs a current account deficit, the deficit is financed by borrowing or reducing its holdings of what? Foreign assets, which is a surplus on what? The capital. This I have explained already. I hope it's clear now.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. So now the question is, if BOP balances, why do we hear BOP deficits? Okay, so it is common to hear BOP deficits when people actually mean a deficit in either the current account, that is I have explained, either a deficit in the current account or a deficit in what? In the capital account. Okay, I've explained it. So those who use the word BOP deficits, all right, mostly like a country like Ghana, we've always had a deficit in our current accounts. Okay, we've always had a deficit in our current accounts. So we always have to have a surplus. I think there are a few more recent years that we managed to miraculously get some surpluses in our current account. Okay, but mostly our current accounts are always in a deficit. Okay, they are almost always in a deficit. All right. Okay. So that's basically what you need to know. Actually, there is a way of incorporating this balance of payment issues into ISLM, the model we studied previously. We won't go into that for now. Okay, we won't go into that for now. There's a way of, so it's called ISLMBP. Okay, so those two curves, you are adding one more curve, all right, to see how fiscal policy in the presence of either a fixed exchange rate or something like that, okay, or flexible exchange, how does fiscal policy become effective when there's this different exchange rate regimes? We won't go into that extent for now. All right. Okay. Now let's move on and look at the exchange rate. So in discussions of exchange rates, there's always this distinction between, so the exchange rate is just simply the price of one currency in terms of another currency. That's what the exchange rate is all about. Okay. So normally there is this distinction between the nominal exchange rate and then the real real exchange rate. The nominal exchange rate. Thank you very much, Frederica. The nominal exchange rate and then the real exchange rate. So the nominal exchange rate refers to the rate at which currencies of two countries are traded. So specifically, the nominal exchange rate, the number of units of a foreign currency that can be purchased with a unit of domestic currency. Okay, and there are two ways of quoting it. There's the direct quotation and the indirect quotation. There are two ways. So how much dollar do I need for a CD? How much CD do I need? There are two ways of quoting it. I can quote it either dollar in terms of CD or CD in terms of dollar. Okay, so there is the price or direct. So the above, when we do foreign currency as a ratio of domestic currency, then it is indirect quotation. But when we do domestic currency as a unit of foreign currency, then it is direct quotation. So what you basically see in our foreign exchange and the forex bureaus and all those stuff are the direct quotations. Okay, the direct quotations that you need 6.15 cedis to get $1. Okay, direct quotations. Okay, all right. Okay, so it is this direct quotation that we'll be dealing with throughout. It is this direct quotation that we'll be dealing with throughout. Okay, good. Can we move on? Are we set for moving on?
Yes, sir.
Good. I can see the number is reducing. Where are people going to? Or they are
Connection
going to
problems. So
connection problems.
Yes, sir, please, the next one.
Oh, okay. Normally we don't go below 200. I don't know why today we are going below 200. I will investigate and tell why. Okay, let's move on. Okay. All right. So using the direct quotation, okay, so the direct quotation, I'm saying that we are doing, say, 6 Ghana cedis equals what? $1. So if we want to use that direct quotation, if instead of 6 cedis for $1, it is 7 cedis for $1, then we are saying that the domestic currency has done what? Has depreciated. An increase in the nominal exchange rate. So we can decide to write the nominal exchange rate at 6/1. So the exchange rate is 6/1, 6. If this 6 increases to 7, so it means that you now need 7 cedis for $1. If it increases to 8, when it is increasing like that, then we are saying that there is depreciation of the domestic currency. All right. So that is what technically they say, that as the exchange rate goes up, there is a depreciation of the domestic currency. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Good. So Barakat, it just has to do with the type of exchange rate regime you are operating. If it is a fixed exchange rate regime, we'll say it's devaluation. When it is flexible, we say it's what? Depreciation. Barakat, are you okay?
Yes, please.
Good. All right. So this means more units of the domestic currency is needed to buy the same unit of the foreign currency. Okay, so what it virtually means is that the domestic currency is gradually doing what? Weakening. Now, when the value of the nominal exchange rate falls, okay, now if it is not 6 cedis per one, but say 5 cedis per one, 4 cedis per one, when we say that the domestic currency is appreciating, or it has appreciated, okay, it has appreciated. So fewer units of the domestic currency are needed to purchase a unit of the foreign currency. Exactly. So you should know the distinction between depreciation of the CD and the appreciation of the CD. You should know the difference. So when you are speaking English, you say depreciation is coming down. It is in terms of value, but numerically, there is depreciation when the exchange rate is going up. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes. Who just spoke? Is it clear before we move on?
The last statement you made that when the numerical change and something that aspect I didn't really get.
So if it is 6, so now let's calculate the exchange rate at 6 divided by the domestic currency divided by the foreign currency. So if the domestic currency is 6 and the foreign currency is 1, there is depreciation when the value falls, so that 6 increases to 7 and 7 increases to 8. Do you understand that? So Joshua, we can do, if you use the indirect quotation. Of course, the dollar is also a currency. So in terms of any other currency, can depreciate or appreciate. Okay, but here we are interested in using the local currency. Is it clear now, Francis? All right. Okay, I'll just assume it's clear. Are you guys with me? Sometimes when the place is quiet like that, I think
Yes, sir.
I just
We are here. We are
maybe
here.
maybe the line has gone off and I'm talking to myself.
Sir, we are here.
So we are
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Okay.
We are
But
listening.
I hope you are following.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
please.
Okay, good. All right. So now let's come to the real exchange rate. The real exchange rate measures the price of domestic goods relative to foreign goods. And it is measured by the number of domestic goods needed to purchase a unit of foreign goods. All right. So the real exchange rate depends on price. Okay, domestic price and foreign price. Okay, and then a nominal exchange. So this is how we calculate the real exchange rate. So the real exchange rate is P. The P up is the domestic price, and then the P subscript FOR is foreign price. So the domestic price divided by the nominal exchange rate multiplied by the nominal exchange rate multiplied by foreign price. Okay. So the definitions are there. So there's an example here that says that suppose a bottle of Coke sells for 2 cedis in Ghana and 100 naira in Nigeria, and the exchange rate is 2 pesos to 1 naira. Then the real exchange rate is the domestic price, which is 2, divided by the nominal exchange rate. The nominal exchange rate is 0.02 pesos to 1 naira. So 0.02 multiplied by the price in naira. And then that is equal. So when you calculate it, and let's see, what do you get when you calculate it? You should get 1. What do you get?
The one.
So 1 Ghana Coke is equal to 1 Nigerian Coke. 1 Ghana Coke is equal to 1 Nigeria Coke. So here we are measuring it in terms of the number of goods. Okay, we are measuring it in terms. Yes, Priscilla, go ahead.
Priscilla, from the 0.02.
That's there. So it's like converting the pesos into cedis. Convert 2 pesos into cedis and tell me. Are you following?
2 pesos.
Good. It's just converting the pesos into cedis.
Sir, please, which one is the local price?
It's 2. The 2 Ghana cedis. Is a P that is up here.
Okay, sir.
Good. So in the above example, a bottle of Coke has the same price in both countries. Then there's this thing called the law of one price or purchasing power parity. Okay. This reflects the idea of purchasing power parity. PPP states that similar basket of goods should have the same price in terms of currency, in terms of the same currency. So for the expression of real exchange rate above, if the real exchange rate is equal to 1, which is the law of one price, if we assume that if the real exchange rate is equal to 1, then P is equal to the domestic price is equal to the nominal exchange rate multiplied by what? By the nominal exchange rate multiplied by foreign price. Yes, Priscilla, are you saying something? Okay. All right. So this is basically simple. All right. So usually when yes, Priscilla. Okay. So basically there.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So now let's come to how do we determine the exchange rates? At least this formula gives you an idea. Okay, this formula here gives you an idea that one of the ways of or what the determinant of exchange rate depends on what the price differentials between countries. Okay. Yes, so price differentials between countries. Okay, price differentials between countries. Okay, so let's move on now. Let's quickly look at the determinants of exchange rates. Okay, so now before we even go to that, I mean, I think somebody asked a question about the depreciation, devaluation. Yes, there are two different regimes. There's the fixed exchange rate regime and then the flexible exchange rate regime. In the fixed exchange rate regime, the exchange rate is officially determined by a certain central bank or government. But in the flexible exchange rate, thanks, Frederica. Thanks for reminding me that I have a program at 5. But let's try and finish this slide. And I will see what will happen to the next one. Maybe I wanted to end everything today. So you have, if we don't finish it, then we'll need about 30 or 1 hour to finish on Thursday. Maybe we'll do that. All right. So flexible exchange rate regime is determined by the forces of demand and supply. Practically, it will be difficult to find countries strictly practicing a fixed exchange rate regime or a flexible. In Africa, the French-speaking countries always operate the fixed exchange rate regime. All other countries operate the flexible exchange rate, but they truly don't operate the true flexible exchange rate regime. They sometimes intervene, so we call it a managed floating system. Many countries practice a form of managed floating system where the exchange rate is largely market determined with occasional interventions by the central bank. That's basically, in fact, Ghana, that's what we do. Occasionally, you hear that the cocoa money is in. When you hear that the cocoa money is in, if you hear that the cocoa money is in, then you know that the central bank is trying to use it to let's clean up. If there is shortage, they bring a lot some money. If there is that kind of thing, all right, that kind of thing is there, all right. Okay, so the nominal exchange rate in the flexible regime is determined by forces of demand and supply. Angela, do you have a question? Okay, good.
Uh-huh.
All right. Okay. So in this market, the equilibrium quantity of domestic currency and the exchange rate are determined. Okay. So there's something supply. Okay. So there's supply. So more or less this is where we are going to. I was reading some messages and it was distracting me. This is where we are going to. We are coming straight here. The demand for foreign currency. Okay, is the exchange rate. Demand for foreign currency, supply of foreign currency. What do you demand the foreign currency for? Okay, some people are asking me about my name. My name is Emmanuel Abbey. Yeah? It's Emmanuel Abbey, okay? I don't know why I'm not able to see. Okay, good. So I've showed you my name now. All right. So there is this demand for exchange rate, supply of exchange rate. The question now is how do we determine what the demand for exchange rate is and what the supply of exchange rate is? Okay. That's basically the big issue. All right. So now the nominal exchange rate is determined by forces of demand. Okay. In this market, the equilibrium quantity of domestic currency are determined. Good. This explains why the strength of a local economy versus the strength of economies, differences in GDP is one important determinant of the interest rate. Differences in the interest rates, okay, differences in interest rates between countries is another important determinant of the exchange rate. The structure of exports and imports is also very important for the determinant of the exchange rate. Fiscal and monetary policy, definitely. All right, so these are the main determinants of exchange rate. The GDP differentials, interest rate differentials, differences in prices, structure of export and imports, all of these things are very, very important. The moment fiscal policy can affect net export, then it means that exchange rate will be affected. Okay. All right. Yes. So Abigail will speak about that. We'll speak about that for the IA. Okay. The IA in the main exams. Okay. So there is a market. So the foreign exchange market is a market where currencies are traded and the exchange rate is determined. And we are saying that we can analyze this market using supply and demand. On the exchange rate market, the demand for dollars comes from people in Ghana who want to make purchases outside the country. Okay, people who want to make purchases outside the country. Importers are people who buy US assets. People paying foreign workers in USD. Okay, all right. So demanders, those who demand foreign currency are usually the importers, and then those who supply are the exporters. Okay, those who supply are the exporters, and those who export are those who supply the foreign currency, and those who demand are the importers. Okay, so that's basically so there is so we need to know now how the demand and supply of foreign currency, what determines the slope or the shape. Okay, supply is just typical, like what we know in the typical supply of goods and services. All right, so the supply for foreign currency is upward sloping. That is, when the exchange rate is high, there is more dollars to the market. And the intuition here is simple. If the exchange rate is high, Ghanaian goods and services become more cheaper to foreigners. So if the exchange rate, assuming the exchange rate is $6 to $1, now if it goes up to say 7, foreigners will find goods in Ghana relatively cheap. So whenever there is a depreciation in the local currency, what is basically happening is that whenever you bring dollar into the country, you melt it, you get a lot more. So foreigners buy more Ghanaian goods, and more dollars become available in the country and in the exchange rate market. So the only thing that would lead to the supply of more foreign currency into the country is when the domestic currency keeps depreciating. All right, it keeps depreciating. So that is why you see the supply curve of the foreign currency moving up. Yes, they are all contributing. They are all contributing simply because the cement and the stuff, most of them are imported. We need that. You understand? Okay. All right. Now, so the supply for foreign currency is upward sloping, and it's quite intuitive that it is when the foreign currency is depreciating and more Ghanaian goods are being bought, more exchange rate is coming, that kind of thing. Now, the demand for foreign currency, imagine what will happen, okay, if the currency keeps depreciating and you need to melt your money from cedis to dollar, okay? So you need more Ghanaian cedis. Okay, you need more Ghanaian cedis to convert to what? $1. What happens here is that foreign goods and services become more expensive to Ghanaians. Okay, and this reduces the demand for dollar. So that is what accounts for the negative. So assuming the exchange rate was going up, okay, assuming it was here, this was assuming the exchange rate goes up here. What happens is that the demand for foreign currency reduces simply because foreign goods becomes more expensive. All right. So here we have the supply of foreign currency and what the demand for foreign currency. Okay. This is how we determine the equilibrium real exchange rate. Okay. Now on this slide, what is happening here is that they're saying that assuming commodity prices are falling, for instance, prices of cocoa are falling. What that means is that the supply of foreign currency into the country will do what? Will drop. It will drop. And if it drops, what will happen to the exchange rate? Somebody should tell me for 5 marks. If
So the exchange rate will increase.
So is it a depreciating or
appreciation?
Says it will depreciate.
Says to depreciate.
It will depreciate. It will depreciate. Good.
It will depreciate, sir.
Don't forget here, increase means depreciation. It is not English that we are speaking. Exactly. Exactly. It will depreciate. That's basically. So basically, when you go into the exams, these are the sort of questions you are going to be facing.
Recording in progress.
And you need to be very careful in analyzing it. Take your time, draw diagrams, and analyze it. And then those of you whose math is not very strong, please, it is about time. It's about time you join some of these study groups that have people who know math more, and then use them to help yourselves. Okay? All right, so Louisa, I'll do that. I'll go over the example. The example here is that assuming commodity prices, I mean, Ghana is, in international trade terms, we say Ghana is a small country. And the reason why it's a small country is that we don't have any control over the goods we send to the international market. So assuming the commodity prices keep falling, it means that the supply of foreign currency into the country will drop. And my question is, what will happen to the exchange rate when the supply of foreign currency is dropping? All right. And we all concluded that it will lead to an increase in the exchange rate and a depreciation. Yes, Paul.
Sir, does that mean that when the exchange rate increases, we get improved trade balance in the current account? Because per what you said, we were like they will be purchasing more of Ghana goods. That's almost like export.
Good question. Good question. I don't know if you've been following the news. I think last year or so, Haruna Industry was more or less on the news to make some argument that yes, whenever the currency is depreciating and your export sector is good, then that is when you will benefit. But we've not been taking advantage of that because our export sector is not very, very good. We've not been taking advantage of that. So theoretically, when your currency is depreciating, exports become better. Your exports become better than your imports. But unfortunately, we have not been taking advantage of it because our export sector is not very strong. Is that clear, Paul?
So thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay. I think we may have to end here. I wanted to wrap up today, but it looks like I've been too ambitious. I've been
Please,
just
one
too
question.
good. Go ahead.
So if the supply of the foreign currency is decreasing,
Yes, the supply curve will shift to the left.
yes, it's shifting to the left. And what happens to our currency?
So you need more currency to buy the dollar.
So okay. That's what the curve is about. Okay, thank you.
Good. All right. Now there is this last topic. This is the last thing we will do. And I wanted to cover it. Should I leave it for you guys to go and read?
Yes.
Say leave it. Say leave it.
No,
Say
sir.
please leave it.
No, sir.
Please
We
leave
can
it.
treat it like
No,
No, sir.
sir,
No,
no.
sir.
Please just
No,
read it
sir.
Say
fine.
leave
Sir, we
it.
can meet
Next
on
week.
Sunday.
we have
Let's
class
read.
on Thursdays.